Good morning. I'm Phyllis Tierney. I'm a sister of St. Joseph from Rochester, New York. And this morning I have as my guest Father Thomas Beery. I'm so glad that you're here, Father.
Well, it's a delight to be here with you to talk a bit about where we are and what's happening, particularly to religious communities. Yeah, you are Sister St. Joseph, and that's one of the older women's active religious orders in the church.
That's right. You know, I became interested in your work a few years ago, Father, when I was at a Federation meeting, and I saw a presentation by Sister Kathy Sherman, who talked a lot about the new cosmology and the new creation story. And I was wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about that, but before we get into that, maybe you could just give us a little bit of information about how you got interested in this and a little bit about your background.
Well, I've been into this ever since I was a child, I suppose, 8, 9, 10 years old. Somehow I felt the increase in commercialization of life. This was a period when the automobile age was just beginning, the paving of the roads had begun. I suppose some of your sisters could remember. We're not young, and some of us have lived pretty much the full course of the 20th century. And this has been the, what you might call, the commercial age. It began quite early, but it's a great story how the humans have thought out their patterns of life in an industrial age. This is, we're the ones that initiated this.
Yes, yeah, we did. Now, Father, you're also a member of a religious community.
Yes,
and so you're very familiar with the role of religious in the church.
Yeah, but I was particularly interested in and fascinated by the monastic life itself, where we lived according to the rhythms of the natural world. The Passionist order has a basic contemplative basis that comes out of the whole monastic tradition of the West, beginning with St. Benedict, who is really the father of the cloistered religious life, the monastic life, who began in the early 6th century, I guess it was. So he patterned the religious life, and this is somewhat relevant to the point we'll discuss this morning. He patterned it into a cosmological context. In fact, the whole worship of the church is patterned into the movement of the sun and the movement of the seasons. We have the prayer at dawn. Of course, with ourselves and with some of the other religious life, a person is up in the middle of the night to experience the darkness of the night and the mystical dimension of the night, and then the grandeur of the dawn, and the hymns that are sung then, and then at midday, and then vespers in the evening, and then that terrific mystical moment when darkness comes over the earth and life settles down into a certain serenity. So, at any rate, that was a part of my religious life that I appreciated most.
Yes.
And then the order itself was more into preaching. You
use the term cosmology and in some of your writings, new cosmology. Could you just talk a little bit about that? I know the first time I heard the term, I didn't quite understand what it was all about, and I really you said a little bit about it in terms of the Psalms and the patterns of the day and the night and the seasons, and it's really kind of the center of what we're talking about, I guess.
Well, it is. There are three basic relationships that humans have to manage properly. The first is divine-human relationship, then interhuman relationships, and then human-earth relationships. The first gives us theology, then we have our anthropology, and all our studies of the human, like our social work and all that. That's an interhuman way of dealing with life, that phase of our life. And that's the fulfillment. These are the fulfillment of the law and the prophets. The love of God, love of neighbor, fulfillment of God. Our relationship with planet Earth is left out.
Yes.
And so we have never, in modern times, developed a proper relationship with the planet Earth. So in our times, that has become central. And our problem now, I would say, is more in our relationship with the planet Earth than it is directly with divine human or interhuman. In fact, the pathos of the human has overwhelmed the tragedy of the Earth. But if we devastate the planet Earth, then our social relations, social concern will not be carried out. Of course, we lose our basis of our food supply, our water supply, and so forth.
Yes, as I pick up the paper daily, we see the concern that's coming out a little bit late, I would say, in terms of managing our environment and our Earth. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, if I were to critique the church generally, or Christianity generally, or the church generally, or religious orders generally, or Catholic universities generally, I would say they're terribly deficient in guiding us in relationship to our human-earth relation. They have not shown the depth of interest that's needed. The earth has to be cared for because we're nothing without the earth. But the thing that's being missed in religious orders, and that's why the best thing that a bishop could do, or that the Pope could do, or the council of the church generally do, is to insist that religious communities and Catholic universities pay adequate attention and special attention right now to mitigating the devastation that humans are inflicting on the planet Earth. It seems to me that there is a mistaken sense of the Earth. We think of it physically, but it's a mystical entity because our inner world depends on the outer world. It's the beauty and wonder and majesty of the oceans, the mountains, the sun, the dawn, the sunset, the seasons that awakens our inner world. I got a collection of poems for children not long ago that I was to comment on them. So I commented, wrote a comment back, and then I wrote a little verse myself. It goes this way. The child awakens to a universe. The mind of the child to a world of wonder. The imagination to a world of beauty. Emotions to a world of intimacy. It takes a universe to make a child, both in outer form and inner spirit. It takes a universe to educate a child. It takes a universe to fulfill a child. And so the first obligation of one generation relates to the next generation is to bring these two together so that the child is fulfilled in the universe fulfilled in the child, while the stars ring out in the heavens. In other words, our approach to the divine is in and through the presence of the divine as it shines forth to us in the natural world. That's why the Bible opens with the creation story. Because although that story in the book of Genesis is given a kind of a tragic twist, at the same time, God says after every day, God looked at the first day and says, good. Second day is creation. I've forgotten the sequence of the events. But after each day, he says it's good. But at the last day, he looks at the whole business and says, very good.
Good.
And that's why St. Thomas, in interpreting this, says, difference is the perfection of the universe. And the reason for difference, he asks the question, why are there so many different things in the world? It says, because God could not create another deity, God created a great diversity of things, just this vast diversity of such a multitude of things, unbelievable diversity, so that the perfection of one would be supplied by the others. But the whole universe together, and this is what St. Thomas says in question 47, article 1 of the first part of his Summa Theologica. He says, so that the whole universe together participates in and manifests the divine more than any single being whatsoever. That's a powerful statement.
It certainly is. It certainly is. I guess I'm so privileged that I live here in Greensboro, North Carolina, and I get to walk in the park every day and really marvel at the beauty in the trees and the nature. And I guess that's kind of in the middle of my soul too. So that's why I really resonate when you talk about that.
Well, let me just tell you why we're in such trouble now.
Okay.
Well, somewhere in the last several years, mainly after Descartes, I think it originated at the time of the plague, the Black Death that occurred in 1347 to 1349, when a third of Europe died. And they had no explanation whatsoever why it happened. They knew nothing of germs. And the only thing they could figure was that the world had become wicked and God was punishing the world, and therefore you need to be redeemed out of the world. And so the preaching became world withdrawal. You need to be redeemed. It became very penitential. Even in the 16th century, you get the Puritanism. Then you get the Catholic Jansenism in the 17th century. And this, by that withdrawal, we left the world open for the exploitation. And that's when people began to think of the planet Earth as natural resource. If it's not a spiritual thing, then it must be a material thing. It must be a natural resource. Now that term, natural resource, to be used, natural resource to be used, that was the disaster. And ever since then, we think of the planet as natural resource to be used. And that's why our political authorities now, and our president, says, if we take care of the Earth with this new sense of climate change and so forth, it'll harm American business.
Yeah.
So let the Earth go until, as long as we can be a predator on the planet Earth, is there to be used, then the whole world ought to rise up against such a political position, because it's ruinous for the human. Because if we don't have an Earth to inspire us inwardly, it is not a wonderful thing. It is not a presence of a numinous, meaningful, divine message, something that gives us music and art and elevates our minds to glorious things. If it's primarily and simply a natural resource to be used for economic purposes, then life is devastated. But we don't think of the inward devastation. And that's why religious people, they talk about the planet Earth as stewardship. But that's not adequate. Stewardship's not the answer. The answer is what might be called this intimate rapport, this sense of fulfillment that we find. Now, the earth nourishes us simultaneously, both physically and spiritually. But if we insist on simply the physical dimension of the earth, it's like being a, what do you call this, a parasite on an animal.
Yes.
That destroys the source of its nourishment. But I'm disappointed, terribly disappointed at Catholic University, terribly disappointed at the whole Catholic world not realizing that this is its own devastation. Now, just take the sisters' religious communities. In the 19th century, there were hundreds of religious communities founded, mostly women's groups, for everything under the sun dealing with the human. For the old people, teaching children, social work, mission work, just an enormous, vast number of orders. So with the 20th century, particularly throughout the 20th century, in this country there were 250,000 nuns at one time, something like that. And of course, now there's a lot of reasons why they are diminishing somewhat, because the government takes over a certain amount of social work and so forth. There are lots of reasons. It's not simple. But in the future, to my mind, one of the things that's going to be most important is the defense of an understanding and a shaping a new rapport with the planet. That's why many women's religious orders, I don't know how many, but have gone back to the land. Sister Miriam McGillis, and they've gone into this understanding of the how humans relate to solar energy and wind energy industry and water. Energy, wind energy and water energy and solar energy, and this new integration. But but particularly the soil. How we relate to the earth, that is gives us our food and nourishment, and needs to be cared for and be intimate with. The great civilizations grew out of their sense of the place. Egypt grew out of the Nile, India the Ganges. You have in Mesopotamian Tigris, Euphrates, frequently along water courses, but the place was where they perceived the residence of divine powers that brought humans into existence, nourished us, fulfilled us, and so forth. But with that present, St. Paul in the first chapter of the Epistle to the Romans mentioned this. Well, not to just limit our conversation to this. It's a long...
Right, but I guess what I think I'm hearing you say is that religious communities, especially women's communities, have an opportunity to model a different form of
They could lead us, they are, and that's why
Yeah.
when over 100 religious women's religious communities came to Louisville to enter into this idea that I present in the great work, that's significant.
Yes, it is. It is.
Because there's the new birth of the human, the new birth of nations, the new birth of peoples is going to come out of the sense of the place where they dwell. Our future is in the place where we now take this place here, Greensboro.
Mm-hmm.
Greensboro has no appreciation of its place.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen this place. I knew this town when it was 15,000. Now it's 250,000. And a metropolitan area of over 1 million.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I know this place. I know the land. And it was this land, and it was this creek that I wandered on when I was 8, 9, 10 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I was free when I was a child to wander. And I learned, I brooded. I describe myself as a brooding personality. I brooded when I was young, or I watched the water, particularly in the waterfall and the creek and the meadow.
Yeah.
I would sit and think.
Yeah.
And then later in life, I decided, how do you can do this as a child and get away with it. What do you do when you're an older person?
Right. Well, I think your work is...
Well, let me finish that
Okay,
just
all right,
for a
okay.
minute. I figure there are two places where you can brood.
Uh-huh.
One is in jail, and the other is in monastery. So I thought I'd go to the monastery. I've been brooding there.
You've been brooding there ever since. That's wonderful. But I think what I have observed is, you meet strangers on the street who will talk about their concern for the environment and the concern for the unlimited growth that they see. So I guess what I'm observing is that there's a growing consciousness among people that something has to be done, but I also think there's a lot of powerlessness.
Well, there is.
Well,
that's just where we have to go back to something really basic. We are no longer familiar with the soil. It takes an effort to go back, but Gail Warcello, our sister Gail Warcello, our pastor's known as that, set up the first ecozoic monastery up in Vermont, or she's in the process of creating it. She just got land. She got almost 200 acres of land. And she has all the ideas. She's written a life program and what the community will be. And she's modeling it to some extent on the work of Miriam Therese McGillis.
right.
I think Miriam Therese McGillis at Genesis Farm has done the primary work. She has made the break into this type of a future. And it's strange the way it happened. The way it happened, she at a school, Caldwell College, all the sisters were raised in the city, knew nothing about the land, nothing about farming. But then there was this German couple that had a farm, and they were getting old. None of their children were interested, and they were wondering what to do with the farm. So that they finally decided they'd give it to the sisters, and at Caldwell College, and then they gave it to the sisters, and they died, and the sisters had this farm on their hands, 150 acres or so. And so they, what to do? Well, Miriam Therese McGillis was an art teacher. She says, well, I think I'll go down and do something with it. So she went down and started a garden, and then she started what's known as a what is it? A community agricultural project, a community-supported agriculture.
Yes, they're becoming more
The
popular, I
CSA
think,
community.
yes.
That's they're over 1,000.
Of them, yeah.
A few years ago, there were 2 or 3.
Yeah,
Now they're over
yeah.
1,000. But I think that's where the future is. It's a community-supported farming project where they are. These people, farmers are skilled people. They're subject to good years, bad years, and all. They can be devastated and wiped out. But if the community puts up the money at the beginning, if you get 150 people, she was supporting for their vegetables on less than 4 acres of land. She was providing the vegetables for over 100 families.
Oh,
They come every week from May through December and get their vegetables.
and they work the land. Do they work the land also?
Well,
they keep that?
they don't work the land themselves unless
Oh.
if they want to do it, they can.
Uh-huh.
But you have a professional, it's a professional
Oh,
gardening
gardening.
project that is supported by the community, and the product goes to the community, but it makes a community come together. Like they come together in the late winter and decide what vegetables they want for the coming season. And the gardener, though, you have this requires a certain mastery. A certain few people really know gardening. Miriam Therese was extraordinarily fortunate that there was somebody that came along that had a background in this, I've forgotten what they call it now, but it's a process of gardening, of intensive gardening. It has some of influence of Rudolf Steiner and some of the other people. But the gardening is done professionally, but as soon as people get into it, then they can make a wonderful product. The children come and they learn the land. They learn through gardening, you learn life and death, that death gives way to life and so forth. Life is born of the decay of things, and they learn an awful lot of things.
Yes, yeah. I think anytime you work with the land, I know I just get a thrill out of planting a seed and watching it grow. I think there's something that gives us life in doing it.
The land is our life.
It is. But I think, I guess for my community, as we have a number of older members, and our thrust has always been in the apostolic, the social end of things. I'm not sure.
Well,
how we were.
the future is with
Yeah.
even socially. This is where the new social issues can be resolved, and community coming together in what's called the bioregional movement. See, the earth is an integral unity, but it's not a sameness. It's a differentiated planet. You have the Arctic and the tropics. You have the temperate zone. You have the desert. You have the lush valleys. You have the rivers, the mountains, and all this, so that it's a sense of place. But my basic point here is that once we got into this economic interpretation, this idea that the earth is natural resource to be used. With humans. You say,
It's a process of re-education and reintegration, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know?
Re-education, reintegration. But it has to be built on this awareness of what's wrong with the present. What's wrong? Well, you say, humans, the worst thing you can say, one human can say to another is, you used me.
Mm-hmm.
You used me. Now that's what the earth is saying to us. You used me. What does that mean? When you use a person, it means that you relate to the person in terms of exploitation with a denial of the wonder and the beauty of people and their grandeur, because we naturally serve each other. Humans serve each other and give to each other and all that. So the earth is willing to say, I will feed you and clothe you and shelter you and all that. But don't use me in the sense of destroying the wonder and the beauty and the intimacy, fulfillment that I offer you and your children. Now, particularly for the children, and I think this might give us a point of maybe closing our conversation, because we can't go on forever. Yes, we can go on for a long time.
We can't.
Because this is obviously something that's deep into the political order and deep into religion, deep into social issues and all that. This is all inclusive. It has to do with the children. Now, my suggestion as regards to children, I've always been primarily interested, what can I do for the children? And throughout the 20th century, we have had certain things. Now, the children could look forward to this blooming industrial world. There were jobs, there was automobiles and all the gadgetry and these superstores coming along and the highways developed, just all this magic of the industrial world. But it's over with. Industrial age, why? One simple reason. The petroleum is going within the lives of the children. The petroleum is going to be so severely diminished. We've used up half the petroleum that's in the. Everything we do is petroleum based.
Yes.
And the discovery of petroleum in 1859, and then the formation of the great petroleum corporations in the 1880s, and along with scientific technologies that were born in 1880, that was the basis on which we moved into the 20th century, and we have in this century kind of devastated the planet for the benefit of humans. But and based on petroleum, our transportation. The automobiles, not only the gas, but the tires and the roadbed are petroleum. The petroleum is the basis of all our industrial chemicals. All our plastics are petroleum. Mm-hmm. Our pharmaceuticals are largely petroleum-based. Our energy in the automobiles, airplanes. I wonder what the airplanes are going to do in another 30 years, because it's estimated by mid-century over 80% of petroleum will be gone.
Wow.
And it's not a renewable resource. And of course, there are things like this new book called Natural Capitalism of how to diminish our use, how to be more efficient. And by being more efficient, we can do with 20% of what we're doing. But that it's questionable about whether that would be enough to continue. But in the 21st century, people are going to have to do the opposite of what we did in the 20th century. In the 20th century, we alienated ourselves from the land. 21st century had to go back to the land, which is ever renewing. Now, the catastrophe was that we moved from an organic, ever renewing, land-based economy to an extractive, non-renewing industrial economy. So now, a non-renewing industrial economy is a way to extinction. It's self-destructive because it's not renewing. The only renewing economy is an organic economy. So the next century, but this can only last a very short time. Particularly, there was the magic of petroleum. And this magic of petroleum, our energy, our heat in the winter, and our cool in the summer, and all that has been based on these. Well, there are ways in which we can do better by using proper insulation, all these things. But it's all going to be a reversal of what we did in the 20th century. So education, everything, medicine, the new laws, I say, I hope I don't go forever on this, but once
But it's so interesting.
My propaganda going, but this university, take the university. I was down speaking to the faculty and administration in Chapel Hill, the University of North Carolina, not too long ago. And I told them substantially what I say here, is that the ecology is not a course, it's not a program, it's the foundation of all courses, all programs, all professions. Now, just take medicine. Or economics first. That it's just plain silly or stupid or ignorant to build a human economy that destroys the earth economy. Because the human economy is a subsystem of the earth economy. So if you destroy the productivity of the earth, how can we get anything? Our first law of business is not taught in the business schools. What's the first law of business? To preserve the integrity of the economy of the earth. Because if you have a derivative economy, it depends on the base economy. That's the first. Take medicine. First law of medicine has to be, you cannot have well humans on a sick planet.
Amen.
And we've been trying to have well humans on a sick planet, and that's just not going to work.
Right.
And we need to restore medicine to an integral relation. Same with religion and spirituality. You cannot have an effective religion or spirituality by destroying the presence of the divine or the presence of the spiritual world in the natural world, because that's where religion originates. That's where we learn the presence of spirit. So, at any rate, you could go through an awful lot of things.
Well, I have a lot of questions I'd like to ask you, but I guess our time is kind of running out in terms of the tape anyway. Just one last question. Do you think it's too late for the Earth? Do you think we can do it?
In many ways it is. In many ways it is. In many ways it's not. But what has to be done, extinct species are gone forever. In fact, I brought something that I wanted to present, and I'll just do it briefly,
Okay.
and just in a couple of minutes. Now, this is the latest thing by James Gustav Speth, who is an ultimate authority on this. Half the tropical forests are gone, and we're going to lose another 10% of the forests throughout the world by 2020. A fourth of bird species are extinct. Imagine a fourth of the bird species, the most beautiful birds. Now this extinction is forever. Neither humans, nor God, nor anybody can bring back. God could make another species, but extinct species gone. 25% of the mammals, things like rabbits and squirrels and all the mammalian species, 20% of reptiles and amphibians, and 25% of fish species. Now these are, we will always have our domestic animals like the cows and sheep and so forth. They're prosperous. But the rate of extinctions today is estimated at 100 or 1,000 times the background rate. That is, the nature is constantly bringing species into existence as they pass out of existence, but over a long period of time. There's nothing like this in all of history quite. Well, perhaps the extinction at 65 million years ago, but in 65 million years, there's been no extinction such as we're bringing. 65 million years. We've only been around, humans, the human type, maybe a couple billion years. But 65 million years, no such extinction is. But here's something that's also, we are appropriating, wasting, or destroying approximately 40% of all the photosynthetic product of the earth. In other words, we humans are appropriating 40% of, say, the growth, the plant growth, or the animal growth, or the living products of the fish, and all that. But we're consuming half of the available water. The water is in desperate need. Most people will soon live in water-stressed areas. Then in 1960, 5% of marine fisheries were either fished to capacity or over. Today, 70% of marine fisheries, and half the world's mangroves have been destroyed. Hardest hit are freshwater ecosystems. That's just a marginal list, and it's the latest thing that is available by the person that knows most. Now, what does that tell us? And how do we go from here on? Well, I think of the children, so maybe I could.
Yes. Would you? I love the introduction you have in your book, The Great Work. Would you?
Yeah. Well, my proposition here is that all the children need to go into the future together. The human children, the children of all the other species, because we'll either go together or we'll all experience disaster. And if the animals experience disaster, humans, we're part of the animal kingdom. So maybe if people have put up with what I've said so far.
It's been very inspiring. It's been inspiring for me, and I know it will be inspiring for those that hear it.
I have a deep sympathy for but particularly the children of the 21st century. They have got, but not only problems, but they do have the delight of creativity. If they will enter in, but that's what we have to give to them. We have to give them the beginnings. We can't carry them very far because they are going to have to do this themselves, but they have to understand the direction in which to go, and that direction is not the direction that we have gone. So, I dedicate this book, the great work, and the great work is to move the human presence on the earth from a destructive presence to a benign and fostering presence on the planet, where we are supportive of the life expression of the planet rather than devastating. So, here we go. To the children. To all the children. To the children who swim beneath the waves of the sea. To those who live in the soils of the earth. To the children of the flowers and the meadows and the trees and the forests. To all those children who roam over the land and the winged ones who fly with the winds. To the human children too, that all the children may go together into the future in the full diversity of their regional communities. Well, that gives you some idea of what I have to say, for better, for worse.
Thank you so much, Father Tom, and thanks for sharing your spiritual insights. That they were very moving, and I know they will make a difference.
Well, I
They
hope
will make a difference.
It's meaningful.
It is.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for taking your time today. Appreciate it.